Tell me one thing that's wrong with the UK immigration system today and what's working well.
Living and building your life outside of your home is already hard. Immigration shouldn't be an additional layer to that. Though this is a flawed system. Immigrants provide so much diversity that is so intrinsic with our daily lives. I think one of the most favorite food in the UK is chicken tikka.
That if you could change one thing to improve the system.
Learn from other countries that do really well, like Singapore. We spend a lot of time creating a platform that integrates seamlessly all the immigration rules based on your visa history.
Did you have any culture shock when you first moved to the United Kingdom?
It took me a year to understand the local slangs.
I'm not gonna lie, and it has grown on me. It's so efficient. Any specific markets that we're seeing, the most amount of interest from, and any specific skill sets that are most attractive to the UK right now? Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by tracking your travel and why we would need to do that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you see with moving to the UK?
People underestimate how much immigration costs. Time is the only thing that matters amongst everything else. Money comes and goes, but once you lose time, it's irreversible. Give yourself at least 6 to 12 months of time to really understand the immigration rules before and what you need to do to prepare the procedure.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cross Border, where we sit down with industry experts, creators, and entrepreneurs facilitating the global exchange of culture and commerce. Today, we're here with Amber Perng, founder of Salmo Visa. So if you've lived abroad and you've been through the visa challenges, you know that it can come with tons of stress. Well, Amber and her team created Salmo to help immigrants and expats facilitate this process. Amber, welcome.
Hello, happy to be here.
So first of all, why don't you tell us how you got here?
So many stories, but I would say that about 5 years ago, I managed to land into a visa called Entrepreneur Visa, which allows me to get to indefinitely to remain after 5 years. And little did I know at the time that I think there was about less than 2,000 people that applied to that visa back in 2019, and probably even less. As a result of that, you cannot find anything online about how to get that visa done. There's nothing about what kind of documents you need to do, what kind of process is ahead. There's just nothing. You can't find anything. It's the only time that Google was useless. And out of desperation, I got a lawyer, spent about £4,000 on it. And he basically just handed me, he went through some of the policies and changed the laws and everything. But basically, he just handed me a paper. I was like, here's a document checklist. And I remember just taking that paper. I was like, oh, this paper costs £4,000. And then I still have to do everything. So while I was preparing the documents with that £4,000 worth of document checklist, I was like, fuck this shit. Though this is a flawed system. This is a design flaw. Like, that's might as well just create a system against the system or like around the system. So that is easier to navigate and it's cheaper to afford.
Yeah, adding legal fees and immigrations is another one that we don't want on there. So just let's walk back a few years. You've been here in London how many years?
12 years.
12 years. So why did you move? First of all, where are you from originally? And why did you move to London?
So I'm originally from Taiwan. I grew up for 4 to 5 years in New Zealand as a kid. When I was 12 years old, I came across a magazine that talked about product design, and specifically from the school of Central St. Martin's. So naively, I was like, this looks great. I'm going to see if I can go there when I get older. So by the time it was high school, I applied to Central St. Martin's, got into the foundation, and came here when I was 18 and stay here since.
Did you have any culture shock when you first moved to the United Kingdom?
Yeah, definitely. I think having lived in New Zealand before, it definitely helped in integrating to London. However, the slang was a huge thing. It took me a year to understand and learn the local slangs.
I agree. Same.
Yeah.
You all right was one that took me a while, and I'm still there's still a few others I'm still getting used to 3 years on.
or like just like phrases like, "Oh, do you fancy that guy?" Or like yeah, there's that in it,
In
and
it.
and
In it,
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, in it has grown on me. It's so efficient sometimes, it's
yeah,
just like good to tack onto the end of a sentence.
yeah, like it's all about efficiency,
Yeah. So okay, speaking of, the the local slang, are you a North London, South London, East or West London?
North London.
North London. What do you like about it?
Um, it's quiet. It's also it's quiet. It's very community based. It's also close to greenery, but not far from the vibey bits of the city. I love going to Hackney in the weekend, have a big party, and then go back to the quietness.
Well, I'm in the East where all that where all that noise is, but yeah, I hear you on the greenery. So, in your perspective, and kind of let's say through the work that you've seen at Salmo, what is the value that expats and immigrants add to a local economy?
Oh, so many. I think economic wise, definitely. People underestimate how much tax we pay. I think what's even more important is the cultural value. Immigrants provide so much diversity that is so intrinsic with our daily lives, to the point that people find it people find it normal. No, I think one of the most favorite food in the UK is chicken tikka, and curry and chips is a thing, and that's just food, and not to mention music like reggae, the whole Caribbean influence, and you see that in America as well. And when there's an influx of music from another culture, it can quickly adapt, and people start to play on top of that, and then you create a whole new genre of music that we have now. Yeah, and on top of that, like art, art, design, everything is so even like Marks and Spencers.
Really?
Yeah.
So, Amber, can you tell me one thing that's wrong with the UK immigration system today and what's working well?
What is not wrong? I think I would say that UK immigration system is run by the policy making. Immigration policies, and this is just from my perspective, are made by people that don't actually understand what it's like to go through immigration, and therefore they make variations and versions of changes every year without fact checking or making sure that it aligns. Imagine stacking layers of pancake, but just with blindfolds on, and just like and then hoping that it will stack in the perfect layer. It's not gonna happen. And I feel like this is the situation for immigration system. And when you don't have policies in line, then you create a lot of confusion. You create a lot of conflicts and contradictions that make countless immigrants' life so much harder.
Is there anything going well? Is there reason for optimism?
Yeah, I would say that even despite the fact there are so many things that are difficult and complicated about the UK immigration system, it's still not the worst in compared to other European countries. When we compare with German immigration, so much more straightforward. Even French ones. German immigration is famous for not only language barrier, but also the complication with like tax registration, all of that.
So you're saying the UK is more straightforward than German?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of actually understanding and securing visa, the process is definitely a lot more straightforward than German and French and Italy.
That's one thing the UK is doing right, I guess. So is there anything that if you could change one thing to improve the system or make it better for people currently going through the process, what would it be?
Definitely to improve the digitization side of everything. There's something very concerning about this area because the Home Office has been notoriously bad with digitization. There's a news that came out revealing how Home Office has a database of profiles of immigrants or anyone that's gone through the border. But amongst that, about 80,000 profiles are mislinked, which means that, say, okay, you go through the border, they swap your passport, it'll show up my face, my name, and my visa details, my right to work, my right to live. And imagine if if you're in an unlucky situation where you swipe someone who overstayed, then you become that person. And it's really hard. Yeah, and it's very, very difficult to prove and get that right.
And correct those sorts of things.
Yes, it's because communicating with the Home Office is another challenge in itself.
Next to impossible.
Absolutely. Recruit more talents, more skilled people to really change the way they either commission or recruit people to make this better, but also adapt and learn from other countries that do really well, like Singapore. Singapore has a really great digital app called Sing app. It's a digital IT that also incorporates with local utilities and information, such as transport, or even like transport all the way to like local promotions of shops and all of that. It's all integrated into one app.
So technology could play a really big role in helping streamline things for the Home Office.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a great idea. Well, I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't, touch on, the Brexit and the impact that you see it's had on immigration here in the UK.
Excuse my English, but Brexit fucked everything up. They pushed for Brexit to gain more control of the immigration border, to restrict and to lower net migration. They got the opposite. Net migration has never been this high before. The reason for that was because of the compensation of the loss of European workers with Asians and African immigrants. It also fucked with a lot of families and a lot of people that lived here for decades. People that never assumed that would have to go through this extremely fucked up situation. I remember it was 2021. That was when it's still COVID time, but it was summertime. And I remember I went to Snappy Snap to get some my tickets printed out, and in front of me was a middle-aged French woman who was in obvious despair and stress. She was holding a deck of A4 sheet paper and was asking the counter guy at Snappy Snap whether or not she needs to send her passport alongside with her documents. And at that point, I immediately knew she was sorting out the whole EU settlement scheme process. It turned out she's about 60 years old, 63 if I remember. She does not have a smartphone. She does not own a computer. Never intended on staying in the UK after Brexit, but she had an old friend who was sick. She extended her stay to take care of him, then ended up being stuck in the UK. And well after the deadline for EU settlement.
This is kind of what you created, Salmo, to help people kind of go through, right? To help alleviate this process.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because life is hard already. And living outside of your home, living and building your life elsewhere is already hard. Immigration shouldn't be an additional layer to that. And on top of all, I think a lot of immigration stress can be alleviated if you just know how to do things in time. And in some ways, I think it's important to view immigration service as preventive service instead of like a painkiller sort of cure.
So can you go into depth about that a little bit more?
Absolutely. Understanding immigration rules well before you actually need to, well before your visa expires.
Or before you break them.
Before you break them, exactly. And knowing what kind of rules that you shouldn't break.
Yeah.
And as well as knowing your visa options and understanding the difference between having a visa and having permanent residency, and knowing exactly whether or not you want to have a permanent residency here or not. And I think these are all preventative preventative measures that you can take while you still have time, such as when you're still on a student visa, such as when you are on a graduate visa. No, these are times where it gives you, where you're still slightly far away from reality to plan ahead.
And when we were talking earlier about, the process, you mentioned simple things that we can do now to plan ahead, such as, keeping your bank statements, tracking your travel. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by tracking your travel and why we would need to do that?
Absolutely. So when it comes to securing permanent residency in the UK, is called indefinite leave to remain, or short for settlement. It is very, very important that you keep track of your travel record, because oftentimes it takes at least 5 to 10 years for you to reach that qualification to settle. And upon handing in your settlement application, you will also have to prove at least 5 to 10 years worth of travel record. As someone that I don't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday, it is, I don't know, 5 years worth of travel record. It's a lot.
It can be daunting.
It can be very daunting, and oftentimes you don't even know if you have the record or not with you. On the other hand, some of these records, they don't last forever. Sometimes it can be bank statements where there's an expiry, or if you just simply deleted them because you thought you don't need them anymore. These are all situations that can change the outcome of your application in ways that you cannot imagine.
So, Amber, how does one legally move to the UK? What are the potential avenues?
In terms of
visas.
In terms of visas or permanent residency, or
as I understand it, a visa could potentially lead to permanent residence, but you have to start with a visa first. And then, what visa you choose depends on your situation, correct?
Different visas can lead to different routes towards indefinite leave to remain. And generally speaking, there are two main routes that you can settle. One is a 5-year route, 5-year plan, and the other is a 10-year plan. And 5-year plan is specifically for visas. It's for specific visas only, and you have to be on that visa for at least 5 years in order to qualify for indefinite leave to remain. And
what are some examples of those visas?
So, such as skilled worker visa, such as family visa, or healthcare worker, scale up, old entrepreneur visa, like the one that I have now. And or say global talent, the promise route is also 5-year. There's quite a few. And these visas, once you get hold for 5 years, you can apply for indefinite leave to remain. 10-year route, on the other hand, is a bit more interesting, because that includes visas that don't directly lead to indefinite leave to remain, such as student visa, such as graduate visa, or youth mobility visa. The idea of a 10-year route is that you can mix and match temporary visas and specific visas, such as skilled worker visas or global talent visas, to add up to at least 10 years worth of time spent in the UK. Then that's also a way to secure indefinite leave to remain. But what's important to be aware is that visas such as visitor visa, seasonal worker visa, and a fiance visa, they don't count towards 10-year route.
I see. So these are kind of all the services that you and your team at Salmo are helping guide your clients and customers through, correct?
Yeah. So basically, we spend a lot of time creating a platform that integrates seamlessly all the immigration rules and behind the stage based on your visa history. If you as long as you give us enough updates, we can generate the exact and recalculate the exact information you need. so that you're on track and also understand where you are at.
Wow. Oh, that sounds like a super helpful service. I know I could have used that when I was going through the visa application at various points through the process. So based on what you all are seeing at Salmo, are there any specific markets that we're seeing the most amount of interest from, and are there any specific skill sets that are most attractive to the UK right now?
I think healthcare industry is definitely the most popular. Otherwise, tech industry is also very in high demand for highly skilled workers. Engineering, for example, and construction. These are all areas. Like STEM as well.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you see with moving to the UK?
I think cost is a huge thing because people underestimate how much immigration costs, and as well as moving.
And where does all that money go?
Who knows? Honestly, who knows? I'll give you some interesting statistics on that. So many people actually assume that immigrants can come to the UK for free. UK visa fees are expensive. It costs on average £1,500 up and down. We also have to pay NHS every year for £1,035. And that is all upfront upon applying for your visa.
So just to be clear, if you're applying for a 5-year visa,
that's 5 years
upfront that you pay
of NHS. So yeah, like about £5,200 on top of the whatever visa fee of the visa choice that you're on.
Also, just to your point, I think that's also in addition to the fact that once you get here, you'll also presumably be paying some sort of tax when you live here, correct?
Absolutely.
And do you sense any racial bias in the system, or is it all purely monetary driven?
Very, very biased. Very, very biased.
Really?
Yes.
Can't say I'm surprised, but
I've spoken with lawyers who have told me of their observation that whenever is a family visa, like say a partner visa of an Eastern European woman and a African man, then the chance of the visa getting flagged will be significantly higher than any other races. And family visa is already a really hard visa to get. On top of mixed race,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Kind of going back to where the money goes, nobody knows. I think it was a report of financial report of 2022. It showed that the Home Office earned approximately £1.3 billion from the healthcare surcharge that immigrants paid, that visa holders paid.
Wow.
1.3
billion.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I have heard from sources saying that a lot of these money are actually spent upon on like hardware updates. So like building new hospitals, renovating old hospitals and all of that.
Well, that's a good use case, I would suppose.
That is a good use, but also I think these are like maintenance that weren't being taken care of on a regular basis, and that's why these are all building up.
Yeah. So they're playing catch up. The NHS is notoriously playing catch up.
Yes, but on top of that, it goes without saying that Home Office is probably one of the few or the only government department that is profitable.
And that's thanks to the immigrants.
There's a report that showed that a Home Office has a profit margin of 800% when it comes to visa applications.
Well, it sounds like they're running a highly profitable business.
It is probably, I had never heard any business that has 800% profit.
Yeah. So the goal for a lot of people, not everyone, some expats come here with the intention to work and leave and return home. Some, come here with the intention to settle. Can you just tell us, what does settlement mean and what does that look like to
So generally speaking, when you're on a visa, you face a lot of restrictions, such as not being able to claim public funds. This includes unemployment benefits or housing benefits. And you're also not allowed to become a sports person unless you're under the specific visa for a sports person. And depending on the type of visa, you also have restrictions specific to that visa, such as if you're on a skilled worker visa, you can only work for the company that sponsors you on a full-time basis.
And within that industry as well.
And within that industry, if you want a second job to work 20 hours a week.
Up to 20 hours a week.
Right. And for my visa, I have an older version of business visa called entrepreneur visa, which only allows me to work for myself. And whereas now they've changed a little bit so you can work for other people.
Wow. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Amber. Thank you so much for your time and all the insight that you've shared. I have one last question. What advice do you have for an individual, a family, or a company going through the visa application process in the UK?
Time. Time is the only thing that matters amongst everything else. Because money comes and goes, but once you lose time, it's irreversible. I would suggest anyone, whether you are an immigrant or a company that is looking to hire an international talent, to give yourself at least 6 to 12 months of time to really understand the immigration rules before and what you need to do to prepare the procedure. And whether or not that is to understand the documents that is required for the application, or understanding and searching additional support to assist you throughout the process. And by giving yourself this amount of time, it reduces your stress. It also lowers your cost, and as well as the desperation and the chance of you actually needing to have a last minute expensive lawyer at the end.
Yeah.
I always recommend people this is a 12-month plan, and you give yourself 6 months to do as much research for visa routes, plan Bs, everything, and then by the 6 months mark you need to focus on one plan and get down to that, whether or not that means finding a coach to help you, or not getting additional service to help you prepare for your application, or really know exactly what is ahead of you. And sometimes 6 months is even not enough.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow. Well, hopefully it is. Hopefully it is for you and for all of you watching. Thank you so much, Amber. Where can people find more information? They can find you obviously on the Home Office website, right? But what about Salmo? Can you talk about where can we find you?
We have our own website. You can find us at www.salmovisa.com. We are also on Instagram and TikTok called salmo.visa or Salmo Visa.
And sometimes we see you on the Cross Border podcast.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by, Amber. This has been super interesting and super helpful. I hope for those of you watching, if you have any questions, feel free to check out the Salmo website. Follow Salmo on Instagram, TikTok, all of the above. Thank you all so much for joining another episode of Cross Border. If you like what you see, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the next episode. Cheers.